Cheryl. Who's reading
Me.
Cheryl?
Am I starting? We're just waiting for one person. I think he's been on the go. Oh, there you are. Good evening.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call?
Ms. Burstein? Mr. Levy?
Here.
Ms. Gruber?
Here.
Ms. Purvis? Mayor Eglin?
Here. May I have a motion to approve the June 18th, 2019 Township Committee minutes? Motion?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the June 18th, 2019 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? May I have a motion to approve the July 16th, 2019 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain, oh, because you weren't here, okay.
Yes.
Reports, okay. Good evening, everybody. First, I want to give a big shout out to Police Chief Gil Fetter and all the Millburn police officers who organized National Night Out on August 6th. There were several hundred people, kids, families, it was great, and all the county law officers who volunteered to be there that night on their off-duty time. So it was a great Millburn spirit, really a great community event. The Shade Tree Commission met and we finalized suggestions for their 5-year master plan, which is in the process of being written. Some of their goals including planting more native species and taking into consideration climate change and sustainability. And my favorite is to aim to plant more shade trees along the main avenues in town. Millburn Rec Department opened the town pool, if you all remember the heat wave of July 20th weekend. I worked with Bob Hogan and Alex, and in a couple of hours, the town website sent out a blast that the pool would be open to all Millburn residents, members or not. Over 500 people showed up that 3 days. And seeing how beautiful the pool is, I hope we get a lot new members. The following weekend, the rec department hosted its summer splash contest at the town pool, judged by myself, Rec Commissioner Scott Redler, and Millburn's own middle school gym teacher Stacy Dinner, who is the assistant director of the pool. So that was really fun. The Township Committee had a special meeting the morning of July 30th where we approved the final funding for the new turf field that will be installed at the library field. This will be the first new turf field in town in over 10 years, only the third turf field in town, and after meeting several lacrosse and soccer parent coaches, they have been asking for this for years, and we're just really happy that this was unanimous from the Township Committee, and the Rec Department worked really hard to make this happen. New Jersey American Water has left South Mountain area, and Mountain Road has been beautifully repaved. Everyone likes that. Alex and I had a meeting with our PSE&G liaison and management reps. PSE&G is in the process of a 10-year program replacing the 100-year-old steel pipes with state-of-the-art PVC pipes. This is for the overall safety as well as to protect the environment. These new pipes will allow for high-pressure gas flow, which is safer and more efficient, especially houses with high-end appliances and full-house generators. This would be much more efficient. The old pipes have what's called micro leaks that allow methane to escape into the atmosphere, so it's dangerous, it's really bad for the environment, and the way the streets were chosen where they're working, it's where the pipes were the oldest and the most leaks were detected. And once, I don't know if there's anybody's neighborhood who's watching, but once you've been informed by PSE&G to schedule your appointment to have your outside meter changed, it's really important so they can get the whole street back up and running. They are aiming to have this done by the end of August, and they're really working where the schools are first, because that's really important. I was assured by our liaison that the roads, any inadvertently damaged sprinklers, landscaping, curbs will all be restored. The patches are temporary, and while annoying, it allows the work to continue. So until the project is actually deemed safe and complete, PSE&G will not be able to fully repave the roads. But they promise us they, on their dime, which is I guess ours because we pay the bills, will be repaving all the roads. So they ask for your patience and understanding. We have been getting a lot of compliments on the new updated and improved town website. Please continue to search the portal to document issues in your neighborhood. This will track your comments, and it goes directly into Town Hall. The website will timestamp it, and it will get to the right person. The website is really great, and if you have any comments or suggestions as you're using it, please let us know. So there was a lot of talk about what's going on at the Turtleback Zoo. I had reached out to the county executive and our freeholders to clear up what the expansion plans are planned at the Turtleback Zoo. This resulted in a meeting almost the next day with the county executive, many zoo employees, and the 4 towns that were affected. Deputy Mayor Benjamin had requested that we ask our zoo personnel to attend these town meetings and address our concerns. And we have representatives here tonight. So they will listen to your comments. If you want to address a zoo issue, please take your 3 minutes, have your questions, and they at the end will come up and address and answer, because we won't be able to have a back and forth dialogue. It just won't be an efficient use of the time. So I just quickly we learned at the meeting that the Essex County Open Space Trust Fund and Advisory Board has a mission for park maintenance, historic preservation and development by acquiring and maintaining open space and recreation. And they'll explain part of the zoo's mission, very important, is educational component. So they will explain what the plan is. I hope they can dispel some of the rumors and kind of give you an organized idea of what's being planned there. And let's see. Oh, as far as the environmental impact, they can address that. So if you guys be patient and we get through the evening, thank you for coming tonight. That concludes my reports. Committeewoman Benjamin?
I just want to remind everybody that September 7th will be Mill Wheels rolling into Millburn, Taylor Park. There'll be food, there'll be music, there'll be displays of the wheels. There'll be all the committees that are represented throughout the township. So I encourage you all to mark your calendar and make sure you are in attendance. I think it's going to be festive and fun and artistic. So the rain date will be the following day, the 8th. But we're praying for good weather and blue skies. Thanks.
Thank you. Committeewoman Purpose?
I have no reports.
Committeeman Levy?
No report.
Jimmy? Clerk
No report.
Christine?
Thank you.
Alex?
No report.
Okay. Kit?
Yes, I have a report. I suppose it goes without saying, as a preface to this, that the township is a defendant in a builder's remedy lawsuit brought by Silverman to help the town create the opportunity for low and moderate income housing in the context of an inclusionary development which they have proposed. The judge has sent that case to mediation, which we have been engaged in for many months. Here's the update. Special Master Frank Banish convened a mediation session last Friday, which was attended by the Millburn mediation team and representatives of Silverman. A conceptual settlement was hammered out with the assistance of Mr. Banish, which is being reduced to writing for consideration by the Township Committee. If approved, the settlement would conclude the builder's remedy lawsuit brought against the township by Silverman. Documents to be prepared are a settlement agreement and a zoning ordinance. We are not able this evening to discuss the terms of settlement inasmuch as we remain within the confidentiality rules of the mediation process. But as previously announced by the mayor, there will be public discussion and comment concerning the settlement as this process moves toward the point where the settlement would theoretically be recommended by the special master to Judge Gardner, thus concluding the mediation process. While the schedule, which I'm about to discuss for consideration of the settlement, is subject to change depending upon how this all unfolds, it looks like this at the present time. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, the documents I mentioned will be put in final form, reflecting the result of the last mediation session a few days ago. The special master would attend a public meeting here on September 3rd. That's during the regular public meeting of the Township Committee, to describe the settlement and all aspects of the development proposed at the site. Again, and assuming that the settlement agreement has been finalized, an ordinance would be introduced on September 3rd, which would authorize execution of the settlement agreement on behalf of the township and amend the zoning ordinance to conform to the zoning provisions allowing for the implementation of the project at some point in the future. The ordinance would be referred to the planning board for its consideration following first reading, and presumably returned to the Township Committee for a second reading of the ordinance on September 17th. The consideration of this ordinance on the 17th, of course, also provides the opportunity for the Township Committee to receive public comment concerning the settlement and the ordinance. If the settlement is authorized and the zoning ordinance adopted, this matter will return to court, at which time Judge Gardner will preside over a fairness hearing, which provides an additional process for interested citizens or parties of any kind to come to court on that occasion to offer comments and legal arguments to the judge pertaining to the settlement and the ordinance. Sometime during this process, we also anticipate that the Fair Share Housing Center, an affordable housing advocacy group which participates in all of these cases, will offer comments to the parties and to the court on the settlement. This hearing is a publicly noticed hearing and is normally set to occur within 60 days of the signing of a settlement agreement, of course, depending on the court's schedule. If the court approves the settlement, then a court order will be entered creating an implementation process and schedule. And at some point thereafter, Silverman would file an application for site plan approval at the planning board, which is also a public proceeding, at which time public comment is entertained by that board. That's what we know as of the moment, and as I said, with the special master will be coming to the regular public meeting on September 3rd to explain the settlement which he has mediated and all of its aspects, and that would be a good time because I know a lot of people have been anxious to know what this is all about. Good time to attend.
Thank you. Okay. Public comment. When invited to speak, oh, I'm sorry, wait, I went too fast. I don't believe George, our county representative, is here. So I was just going to confirm with him that I've been speaking to our county engineer about everyone wants to know when they're going to be repaving from Upper Millburn Avenue down past the high school. So I've kind of been on his case about that, and hopefully they're moving things around, and if we're lucky it can get done before the school year, but no guarantees. But I'm being the squeaky wheel on that, because that's really terrible. Now, we have a presentation tonight from the Environmental Commission to express support of prohibition of disposable plastics in Millburn Township. And I'm the liaison to Environmental Commission, and are you all gonna come up and?
I'm going to start.
Okay, so please, just state your name and address.
Sure.
And
Hello, my name is Ed Hilsenrath. I live at 85 Mohawk Road in Short Hills. On July 9th, 2019, the Millburn Environmental Commission unanimously approved the resolution you have before you to pass an ordinance to regulate the use of single-use plastic bags, paper bags, plastic straws, and polystyrene carry-out containers by retail establishments in the Township of Millburn. Production and disposal of these items has significant negative environmental impacts on our community, including contamination in the environment, depletion of natural resources, consumption of non-renewable polluting fossil fuels, and increased cleanup and disposal costs. Over 50 New Jersey towns have enacted some form of ordinance prohibiting distribution of these materials. In addition, neighboring states such as New York State and Connecticut have recently put in bans on various plastic items as well. Pending New Jersey legislation regarding single-use plastics is currently stalled in Trenton, and we believe it's time for Millburn Township to join with other New Jersey towns, including our neighboring towns of Maplewood and South Orange, in enacting an ordinance to reduce use. The proposed ordinance is modeled after New Jersey Bill S2776A4330, which is currently being considered by the New Jersey legislature. The purpose is to change retailer and consumer behavior to reduce the use of these items. Very few single-use plastic carryout bags are recycled. Estimates are as low as 1%. And plastic beverage straws and polystyrene containers are non-recyclable items which, after use, go directly into the municipal waste stream. Millburn Township taxpayers currently bear both the monetary and environmental costs associated with the negative impact of these items. The details of the ordinance are as follows. Single-use plastic carryout bags. No retail establishment may provide any customer with a single-use plastic carryout bag. Retail establishments may make compliant bags, such as reusable bags or recyclable paper bags, available for a fee. We are currently proposing 5 cents per paper bag. The following items are not considered single-use plastic carryout bags and are exempt from the prohibition. Plastic bags to package bulk items such as fruit, vegetables, nuts, grains, candy, small hardware items, non-frozen foods, meat or fish, to wrap flowers, potted plants, or items where dampness may be an issue, to contain unwrapped prepared foods or bakery goods, pharmacy prescription bags, newspaper bags, door hanger bags, laundry and dry cleaning bags, and bags sold in packages containing multiple bags intended for food storage, garbage bags, yard waste bags, and pet waste bags. With regard to plastic straws, no food service business will be permitted to sell or provide a single-use plastic straw to a customer. However, food service businesses may provide a single-use plastic straw to a person that requires one due to a disability or medical condition. Polystyrene containers. No retail establishment will permit to sell or provide any food in a polystyrene container. With regard to enforcement, we propose that the Millburn Township Enforcement Code Officer have responsibility for enforcement of the ordinance. Fines will be assessed for violations. In the past 4 months, the Millburn Environmental Commission has held 2 open sessions for township residents and 4 open sessions with township merchants to explain the proposed ordinance as well as to garner feedback. We have incorporated this feedback into the ordinance you see before you. In addition, we have reviewed and studied ordinances that have been adopted by our neighboring towns, and we have been in touch with our colleagues in these towns to better understand the implementation process. We are prepared to assist township merchants and consumers with finding suitable substitutes for these non-reusable plastic items, and we would just like to say in conclusion that we want to join the other 50 towns in New Jersey that have already enacted some form of ordinance. With the legislation currently stalled in Trenton, we think the time to act is now. Thank you, and we have any questions? There are a number of members of the EC and the Millburn Green Team who we're happy to answer any questions.
Do you members? Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation and
Thank you.
for your work and for the group's presentation and work. The proposed ordinance represents that 500 million plastic straws are discarded in the U.S. each day. There are only 325 million persons.
It's actually
in the
not
United
each day,
States.
it's annually.
Okay, well, it says each day, right?
I think at the end I say 500
In
million
your
plastic.
fourth whereas clause. I mean, if it's a typo, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just would find it remarkable that
Yeah.
each person plus 25% are discarding a straw every single day. The,
It's a typo. It's annually.
Fair enough.
Thank you, though.
in terms of the ordinance itself, I have some questions about what the proposal is.
Mm-hmm.
The 18-2.3 says retail establishments may make available for a fee compliant bags, but the fee charged shall be reflected in the sales receipt. So is it the intent that retail establishments may offer compliant paper bags, cotton bags, other types of
Yes,
bags?
that
They don't
is,
have to do that, but they may do it.
that is correct.
But if they do, they have to charge a fee, right?
Correct.
And the purpose of that fee, I assume, is to create public awareness, to cause the consumer to think, well, since I have to pay a fee, maybe I should be bringing my own bags instead.
Yes, it's absolutely to try to change consumer behavior.
Okay,
It's,
so,
if you're giving them out for free, then,
right, so you're compelling retail establishments to charge a fee in order to change consumer behavior. So you're putting retail establishments in the position of adjusting consumer behavior by,
Well-
by passing an ordinance, by suggesting, you're suggesting, not passing, but suggesting to pass an ordinance that causes that retail establishment to force a fee on the consumer, right? And that's just to change behavior.
That is, yes, that is certainly one part of it. Come up and talk, Renee, please. Yeah. So-
Hi, I'm Renee Paparian. I'm co-chair of the Millburn Township Green Team. I live at 64 Mountain View Road. The behavior that's sought to change is not only the residents or the shoppers' behavior, but it's also the merchants' behavior. The
Well,
entire
you're barring
reason.
the merchants from selling these things, so, from providing them, so by ordinance, you are changing that behavior, right?
Because the intent is reusable for all of these items, for the bags, for the beverage straws, and for the takeout containers. That's the aim. So it is a shift in behavior. Am I not understanding your question?
No, I think you understood it. But the
Okay.
answer is that this is an attempt through a compelled fee to change consumer behavior.
That's right.
Okay.
But consumers are certainly able and should hopefully bring their own bags, thus negating the need for them to purchase it from a merchant,
I understand that,
Yeah,
and
okay.
the plastics organizations, the companies that are behind
Yeah.
manufacturing these bags, would submit in opposition to these types of ordinances that if someone acquires, say, an organic cotton bag, which is the bag of choice of many green persons promoting these things,
Yeah.
that it takes the use of that bag on average 20,000 times before the carbon footprint needed to create that bag is neutralized. So in essence, the argument is that you are trading one environmental problem for another. And the environmental issue that's created with the use of paper bags and organic cotton bags and other bags, the carbon footprint on that, the argument is, and I don't
Right.
think anyone's an expert, I know that I'm not an expert on
I
this.
know I'm not as well, certainly, I agree.
But
yeah.
the argument is, and I do find it compelling, is that it creates more greenhouse gases and has a larger impact on climate change than the prohibitions on these kinds of plastics. I'm not suggesting that
Right.
there is a good answer to protect the environment here. There are a lot of bad answers. But you're essentially substituting one environmental concern for the other, and the other environmental concern may have more of a dubious impact on the environment with regard to greenhouse gases, which is a more topical issue.
The best thing would be people shop at Costco and they leave with no bags and they cart things and put them in their car. So, yeah, could you do that at ShopRite? Of course you can. The idea with
I don't know if
plastic,
you
though.
can do that because
Why?
you purchase in bulk at Costco. I don't think people are gonna put 100 items into their back of their.
Why
car.
not?
Excuse me.
You may not do that now, but you could change your habit. And what I was going to say is the difference, and yes, there is environmental impact with all of these things. That is true, and anybody who knows about it will admit that, but with plastic, it doesn't biodegrade. With plastic, there's micro pieces that are going to go into our waterways, they're in our air. They just don't go away, they're in our food, they're in us.
Yeah, but
So
you
that
still-
is one of, so
We have
I
no
guess
perfect
it's a
world
balancing
solution.
act.
We have no perfect world solution, and again, the impact on sustainability and the environment and the greenhouse effects, which is really more of an acute problem by most scientists' admissions today, is more impacted with the development of these substitute products. And that's not Sam Levy saying it, that's many.
So if you're saying there's no perfect answer, I think everyone in the room would agree, there's no perfect answer, but you do the very best you can.
Yeah, well, I guess.
And an
My point
ordinance
is, I'm not
like
sure that this is the best
and
that
an
you can.
ordinance like this is a very easy fix to getting rid of single-use disposables, these 3 items. It's a simple, easy fix.
One final question, just on the straws themselves. I seem to be defending the poor straw here, but the much maligned straw in America today, what did it ever do? Under 18-2.6, straws can be dispensed by retail establishments and restaurants if somebody has a disability or a medical condition, right? That's not the environmental commission being generous, that's ADA, so you have to do that. So the first question I would have is, what is a medical condition? Anyone could walk in and say, I have some medical condition, I warrant a straw.
That's absolutely true. And
Right.
we talked about that, and our feeling was that with this, that knowing that you can't deny somebody who has a medical condition something, that the idea was, you know what, take people at their word on it.
You
We
do.
hope that people do the right thing.
You do,
It's-
and you
it's- it's-
should.
and-
Same with
yeah.
the disabled. You may not know that somebody's disabled, and they ask you. But here's what you do,
Yeah.
is organizations who have looked at these ordinances around the country have protested in many places, claiming that they're being shamed, that the disabled are being shamed, and those suffering medical conditions are being shamed because they are identified at restaurants and other establishments with a plastic straw. So everyone walking into a restaurant, say in Millburn, may say, well, I never knew that, I'll use me. Sam Levy had a medical condition. I never knew that Sam Levy was disabled. He must be, because he's using a straw. And there are a lot of protests on this. And I think that we as a committee should consider that as well, too. Thank you.
That's a fair point. Thank you.
Committeewoman Liebenberg?
I'm just a little confused on the breakout. You have compliant bags for a fee, but you don't have a fee associated with those bags. But you have regulation of recycled paper carryout, you're saying 5 cents. Why did you break out and distinguish between the two types of
Because the reusable compliant bags are going to be more than a 5-cent charge, and we wanted to leave it up to merchants to charge what they feel is the right price to cover their costs for those.
So a reusable compliant bag would be,
A bag made of cloth or other washable material that's machine washable and made from material that can be cleaned or disinfected. We have a definition of it in 18.2.1 B, defines what a reusable compliant bag is.
got it. Okay.
I have a question.
Please.
So I attended many of those merchant meetings
Yes, you
and the library meetings, and I was just kind of wondering what was like from the feedback that you got from the merchants or some of the residents who had questions, like, and what was the feedback that you incorporated from them?
Specifically, the carve-outs to plastic bags, we feel like we took into great consideration some of the merchants' concerns. If you look at, it's in 18.2.1, at the end there, what's not considered single-use plastic bags. There are a number of carve-outs that businesses had. Come on up and say also, please. It's, but that was certainly taken into consideration. Stuff that's not necessarily in here yet that was a key concern of a number of merchants was the rollout process. And, that's still to be discussed, but the idea that there's not, we're not proposing one firm date when this goes into, action, but instead sort of a soft rollout over time so everybody could do their best to, get substitutes in place and work off if they have inventory, that type of thing.
Okay, so were carve-outs added?
Additionally, a reduction in the proposed fee on the paper bags
Yes.
from, I think we had 25 cents initially.
Yeah.
And reduced it down to 5.
Yeah.
Where are the carve-outs?
They are in 18.2.1. You see A there about about halfway down the page.
Okay. But there were which carve-outs were added? You don't.
I don't remember exactly which ones we added, but we know we fleshed this list out. So, yeah.
Please.
Go ahead, please, yeah.
Lisa Chinovsky, singer, Millburn, 325 Wyoming Avenue, Millburn, New Jersey. Basically, the carve-outs were all of Section A.
Lisa, can you speak into the
Sorry.
microphone so everyone
Sure.
can hear you? Thanks.
Sorry. The carve-outs were all of 1 through 5 that we added on the A. I'm sorry about that. and also talking about compliance, talking about rollout, and also talking about transition plans, which are not addressed, because we know that has to go into further discussion.
Why did you carve out then, you know, fruits and vegetables? So somebody goes into a supermarket and grabs 5 peaches, they put them in the thinner plastic bag and take it up, but they can't put it in the thicker plastic bag to take it away to their car, right? That's an exclusion.
Because the bags that are addressed here and the polystyrene are for point of purchase, not what's used inside the store.
No, I know that from reading this. I'm saying.
That's the reason.
Well, that's an arbitrary reason, because you allow one bag in a store to be used, but you exclude another bag
Well,
to be used.
Can I address that? I think we met with the owner of this ShopRite, our 3 local ShopRites. He owns many ShopRites. And that was a big concern as far as people being able to get their fruits and vegetables, and as far as also packaging of lamb chops and steaks and meats and chickens. So I think that even in New York City, New York State, that is a universal carve-out, because you're not going to carry your 5 peaches. So,
Well, why not? I mean,
well, Sam, because there has to be some, make it a little bit, practical. And the idea is to get rid of the yellow, I'm not going to
The
think on ShopRite.
largest amount of
Right.
distributed plastic, and Diane, Mayor, you are absolutely right, it is a universal carve-out,
Right.
not only in New Jersey.
Yeah.
but you'd
And I-
agree it's arbitrary though, right?
It's not for us to agree or not,
Right.
it's just what it is.
Right.
Well,
I think,
it's not, because you're the one writing the ordinance, so it's not just what it is, it's what you write.
okay, we get it. I think I also would like to point out that in all of Indonesia, India, there's full nations that have banned these plastic bags, these type. And I think you will be fined an amount in some of these nations, if I'm not correct, right? So I just,
Sorry, I just want to address one point that was.
just Priya Patel.
Oh, Priya Patel, I live at 9 Farview Road. So I just want to address a comment from Sam Levy, or a question comment regarding, the carbon footprint of non-plastic bags versus plastic bags, et cetera. And I don't think that we're looking to go tit for tat on the data with this ordinance. We're simply trying to address one aspect of the litter. I mean, the massive global problem of plastic litter, which bags comprise a large volume of, and we can see that here locally as well. I'm a member of Soma Action Climate and other various groups, Rahway River Watershed Association, and we do river cleanups all year round. And the number one item that we drag out of the river are plastic bags. And these plastic bags clog up storm drains. They, wildlife get caught in the bags. The bags get mucky and they get caught along the sides of the rivers. They're not only an eyesore, but they present just a huge, as Renee alluded to earlier, just a huge polluting environmental impact. So I just wanted to add that comment.
Thank you. I would also like to point out that many restaurants that we frequent in town are already voluntarily being compliant. I haven't been offered a straw in a restaurant in quite a while. I'm noticing some of our takeout food is already coming in cardboard containers. So I think the restaurants are trying to make these changes. So I understand where I can't see what that sign says. Can you just tell me what that says? I can't read that at all.
You make a choice and you make a difference. If not by 2050, there will be more plastic in our oceans and fish.
Thank you. So we have a lot of things to go over. I think we have to decide as a township committee if we want to move forward with this, if we want to have another presentation, if we want to take a kind of a straw poll. Sorry. Do we want to go forward and have this resolution adopted by the township committee by ordinance? So we take an unofficial vote. Can we do that?
I think you want to figure out what
Yeah.
the next step should be.
Right, our
To
next
take
step-
that
Do we
ordinance
want to
and
open
draft it.
this up to public discussion
Yeah, we
before
will.
we?
Sure, because we're not doing anything. I just wanted to kind of get your feeling if you want to go in this general direction of tweaking this, moving it forward in this form, another form, are you in favor,
I think we
generally
should
speaking?
continue the conversation.
Okay. Committeeman Levy?
I'm open for a further dialogue.
Okay. Committeewoman Benjamin Lieberberg?
Yep, I concur with the,
Okay,
to
so.
continue the discussion.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're gonna have public comment. There's a lot of people, we all got a lot of emails about this today, so, thank you. And we will now open the floor up to public comment.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. May I have to give my disclaimer? When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or committee member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the Township Clerk's office at cgatty@millburntwp.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. You'll see our counter counts up, so we'll know that you can see that better than we can up here. So, you're first. Hi.
Hi, I'm Bill Horvat. I live at 40 Whitney Road, and my profession has been an actuary. And I'd like to point out that it's very important, if the Township Committee wants to continue the discussion on environmental issues, that they get credible opinions from both sides of the issue. I mean, what you don't realize in terms of, say, health, you think that health lifespans have been improved by things like antibiotics, and they have. But in the last 2 centuries, the greatest improvements in health have come from sanitation, from segregating sewage from water. And yet here we're talking about bags that will create the opportunity for various amoebas and whatever to stay with the person instead of entering the trash, the trash. And I would just hope that you would get appropriate advice on the limitations of this approach as well as the benefits that were provided. Thank you.
Judy Rosenthal, 12 Marion Avenue. To the gentleman's point, stick your cotton bags in the wash once a week. If he's worried about some kind of amoebas, actually it would be bacteria. Amoebas live in water. To Mr. Levy's point, one of the things that the carbon footprint studies don't take into account is the following. Plastic plants do not, plants that produce, not plants that grow, factories that produce plastic bags do not produce oxygen. Cotton farms do, and that's not factored into the footprint analysis. So it's a flawed argument. So I heartily support the ban on straws. I was in Tara's establishment the other day, and the lady who waited on me asked her for a straw, and she said, a lot of people are not happy with the paper straws because they disintegrate. Well, there's an easy solution. If the paper straw starts to disintegrate after 5 minutes or so, ask for another one. Putting another paper straw into the waste stream isn't going to negatively impact the environment that much compared to a plastic straw. Number 2, as to Mr. Levy's point about the disabled somehow being stigmatized by using a plastic straw, a lot of the disabled have their own straws. They're made of metal, and as a matter of fact, I think Tara's establishment sells them or offers them. And a lot of people are now switching. They bring their own straws. So rather than being a sign of stigma, it's a sign of environmental awareness. If you're carrying your own metal straw, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're disabled. It means you're smart and you care about the environment. Now, for the rest of my time, I would like to use it to address the Turtleback Zoo, unless you want that to be a separate.
Yeah, let's do that separately.
Okay,
We
cool.
have a big group of, who's next? Would you mind, I'm sorry, if we let this group
Yes,
of
okay,
kids
so
go?
I
Because
just-
they're here for their 3 minutes, and I see they're all kind of ready to go.
No problem.
So, kids, come on up.
you.
Thank you. So, when we were all at the National Night Out,
you so
I
much.
saw the group of kids wearing these T-shirts, and I asked, "What is your purpose?" And they said they would like to come. I said I invited them to come to Township Committee meeting tonight and give their 3 minutes on what their charity organization is. So welcome.
Yes. Okay, so the mission of St.
Oh, wait,
Jude's.
you just
oh.
introduced yourself?
Yes, I'm Shane Sullivan. I'm a senior in Millburn High School.
Where do you live?
Short Hills,
Street.
New Jersey. Oh, 10 Deerfield Road.
Okay,
Okay, I'm good?
you're good.
Sorry, thanks. The mission of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is to advance cures and means of prevention for pediatric catastrophic diseases through research and treatment. Consistent with the vision of their founder Danny Thomas, no child is denied treatment based on race, religion, or a family's ability to pay. Treatments invented at St. Jude have helped push the overall childhood cancer survival rate from 20% to more than 80% since it opened in 1962. Families never received a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, because all a family should worry about is helping their child survive. The children being treated at St. Jude are real warriors, fighting every single day, hoping to see the next, and we have taken our name in their honor. The Teen Warriors are a like-minded group of student leaders who truly believe that no child should die in the dawn of life. Our team is diverse and inclusive, and we come from towns all over New Jersey. We have banded together to help fellow teens fight cancer at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Thank you.
My name is Grace Varnish. I'm also a senior at Millburn High School, and I live at 20 Great Hills Terrace. So last year we also had an event, and we called it the Chariots of Fire event. And we started off to a slow start. We had 3 months of delays because of insurance problems at Taylor Park, but we were able to raise $25,000 in just 22 days by working with local merchants around town, also having some canning days like how the athletic programs do at the high school. We also received donations from our friends and family, each of us individually, and we have a few thanks that we have. We like to thank Bob Hogan from the rec department, the De Amor Salon for raising $5,000 for us, the Boxcar Bar for raising $2,500 for us, and we had some advertising help from La Strada and the Millburn Deli, and for Eric Model, who raised $4,000 for our Peloton for Survival event that we had. So.
Hi, I'm Taylor Cook. I also live in Short Hills, and I'm a senior at Millburn High School. My address is 100 Whitney Road. And this year we've been invited to join the Northern New Jersey Run Walk, which is in Cedar Grove. And our team, the Teen Warriors, is honored to be recognized as the first committee of teens to ever co-chair a National St. Jude event. So we're hoping it will be really good this year. And we've raised $14,000 so far, but we're just getting started. And as Grace mentioned, last year we raised over $25,000 with our run walk. And we have the support of our friends and family, but we're really looking for more support from our community.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Maya Hicks. I live in Short Hills. I think we actually met before.
We did,
yeah.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to working with our local merchants. We are not asking them for donations. We are asking them to partner with us. We are providing a platform for our merchants to spread goodwill. By advertising our event, they are telling their customers that they are not only supporting our mission of St. Jude, they are also helping students with their project and community of the Teen Warrior Project. The merchants get a goodwill talking point. We get free advertising and donations from their customers. We start by having them join our team webpage, which generates a personal page for the merchants. Now everybody on our team can see that they are supporting our project. This is our Hey Jude project campaign. We are working with delis, restaurants, bagel shops, and businesses that serve food and having them create their own signature dishes called the Hey Jude. A portion of every Hey Jude sold gets donated to the charity. The merchants post their donations on their webpage, which is connected to our page, and is connected to the event page. 3 ways to get advertising costs is $10 to sign up and to join our team. As you can see, we have real advertising tools that are branded by St. Jude that can deliver any message that our partners want to relay to their customers.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ella Parlavecchia. I'm a senior at Oak Knoll School, and I also live in Short Hills at 139 Fairfield Drive. We received a commitment from the Millburn Police Department to be our Hey Jude judges. When we attended National Night Out, we started talking to officers about our event, and they offered to help us and be involved with our project. Our police department is the best, and we thought this would be a fun way of getting them involved. Currently, we have Mia Familia, Boxcar, and Lestrada teaming with us. Mia Familia and Lestrada are donating proceeds from their Hey Judes, and Boxcar is sponsoring a St. Jude night on September 23rd, donating 20% of their sales back to our charity. We will be canvassing the town over the next couple of days, signing up new partners, and getting our whole town involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Francesca Becky. I'm a senior at Morristown Beard School. So we are planning a follow-up day to be held at the Millburn Library. And the morning will start with an empowerment of women presentation with a member of the advisory board of leading entrepreneurs, because mostly women. So Simone Sloan will then follow up with a diversity and inclusion workshop. Okay, I'm just gonna go to the next page. So that afternoon, we will finish with tips from a college coach and Q&A, and finally, a workshop on how to get recruited for sports. And speakers will be present from Swarthmore, Princeton, and Bates. So, bigwigs.
And what date is that at the library?
No
date yet. No date yet.
TBD.
To be, okay.
Taylor Cook again. Do I have to restate everything?
No.
Okay. So we were hoping for the opportunity to stop in again in September to just go over our plans and everything, and also go over everything for our event in 2020, because we'll be graduated, so we're hoping to pass it down to the other underclassmen. And we just wanted to say that we really appreciate the opportunity to come here and present today, and all the support from our community. So thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have now the robotics winner, the Odyssey of the Mind. I think this town is producing some amazing kids. So once again, thank you for coming out tonight. Okay, thank you. So you can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want. It's really good. Okay, on with public comment.
Okay, Jean Cosgrove, 99 Oakview Terrace, Short Hills. I just heard the announcement about the conceptual settlement agreement of 85 Woodland Road. The last depictions that we, the public, saw on the developer's website showed a high-density, four-story building as it heads down Woodland Road. If this is the current plan, it's unacceptable. I urge you not to bring it for a full board vote until there is a plan suitable for the site. What was shown is of inappropriate magnitude and density and will overpower our neighborhood of two-story residential buildings. We need a more modest project. And then now there are other towns that have had affordable housing projects, and here's what their densities were. Dumont's was 22 units per acre. Cranford's was 23 per acre. This one on Woodland is 1.5 acres with 62 units plus 10,000 square feet of Summit Medical Group. Just the 62 units on the 1.5 acres is 43.3 per acre units. And then, so now you have an additional Summit Medical Group adding additional density, and keep in mind, this is a heavily trafficked business. Let's see. Also, I want you to keep in mind that you've only seen just a few of us, but there are a lot of us concerned about the unsuitability of the site and its magnitude. And we've been monitoring for them and updating hundreds of units who are equally concerned about this high-density project, well beyond what other similar situations in communities like ours have. And so before you put it to a vote, I think that you need to review if this is the plan and modify it so that you can get an appropriate settlement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street in Millburn. Speaking of building, I have a statement I'd like to read. I, like so many others, am completely opposed to even the consideration of expanding Turtleback Zoo, and especially now with the consideration of the addition of, among other things, an amphitheater. I have been a resident of Millburn for 40 years. We raised our children less than 3 miles from the Turtleback Zoo, where we have spent countless hours over the years. Now, as grandparents, we give Christmas gifts of zoo family memberships for our grandchildren, and we delight in frequently visiting the zoo with them. However, these new expansion considerations are very concerning to me. As a child, I can remember experiencing with horror the conditions under which the occupants of many zoos and circuses were kept. I have never thought of visiting a zoo as a form of entertainment, but instead as a unique and precious opportunity to experience and to learn about these wonderful fellow living creatures. Over the years, I have noted generally a positive evolution in the living conditions of the residents of zoological parks. And up until recently, I have always felt assured that the Turtleback Zoo works primarily to provide positive and appropriate environments for their residents. The recent tendency toward expansions, and especially this current amphitheater consideration, however, have given me cause to question that. Being retired, we have the opportunity to visit Turtleback at times when it is not crowded. We have often noted how much more relaxed and comfortable and accessible most of the animal residents seem, as opposed to the times when the zoo is filled with virtually wall-to-wall people. It is hard not to be concerned with that difference when still more expansion is even being considered. Aside from the very legitimate environmental concerns for the South Mountain Reservation that many have expressed and with which I totally agree, the thought of now also building a large amphitheater, most egregiously containing display pools, brings to mind the horror of a circus environment that is very disturbing. Even though I have seen many changes and additions over the decades, and have most recently felt increasing concern about them, I still have believed, especially with the turtle rescue activities and the on-site hospital, that the Turtleback Zoo's philosophy is largely to nurture, educate, and teach respect for these amazing creatures. The prospect of the addition of a large amphitheater, however, in my mind, totally flies in the face of that ideal. Thinking of the zoo as a money-making entertainment endeavor, not to mention spending my taxpayer dollars on it while seemingly carelessly encroaching on our limited open space to do it, is absolutely appalling to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dave Cosgrove, 99 Oakview. I appreciate the announcement, and this may be a question more directed to Mr. Falcone. When are we going to find out the details of this top secret agreement that you have?
September 3rd.
September 3rd.
Excuse me?
September 3rd.
Okay.
Next meeting.
September 3rd at the meeting, and then residents are supposed to address that with the mediator at the same time, right? That date.
Well,
And then we're going to wrap it up by the end of September.
I haven't, we haven't figured out how we would like to get that information out ahead of September 3rd, because I know that it would help you assimilate the information. We're still trying to figure out how best to do that. But worst case, he will come and explain all of the details on that occasion. And a public hearing will take place a couple of weeks later, at which time all of the documents will have been examined by you and made available to you. You will have an opportunity at that point to comment on any aspect of the settlement or the ordinance.
It just seems like awful short notice to people who have been out here trying to find out about this for a year and a half, 2 years now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa DeVos. I live at 81 Watchung Drive, Hawthorne, New Jersey. I'm a volunteer at the Turtleback Zoo, specifically a docent. Docent is a Latin word for volunteer educator. I have been a docent for 16 years. I started my career at the Bronx Zoo, and for the last 5 years have been working at the Turtleback Zoo. I changed my zoo because of the wonderful reputation of the Turtleback Zoo and the wonderful things that were happening at the zoo. And like the song says, everything's happening at the zoo. My role at the Turtleback Zoo is to interact with guests and to answer their questions and promote our conservation message. But I am just one person, and I only can speak with a handful of individuals every time they're at the zoo. The proposed education amphitheater, which I understand is just in the design and development phase, would allow us to deliver our conservation message to a larger audience that is already present at the zoo. By having a designated area with steer-style seating, we would be able to speak to a larger audience, which would allow us to share our ambassador animals, which are the local representatives for their wild counterparts. And being able to share these animals with our guests help to reinforce our conservation message. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Emily Rosenzweig. I live at 39 Myrtle Avenue in Millburn. And I'm speaking on behalf of a broad coalition of Essex County organizations that support immigrant rights. I've grown up in Millburn, and I've lived here almost my entire life, except for when I went to college. This town and this community are very important to me. And since I've been a member of an organization here, I've learned that Essex County is incarcerating nearly 1,000 immigrants in its county jail. This is possible because our county has a contract with ICE, which is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, whose principal role is to lock up and deport immigrants and separate families. People have been standing up and fighting back against these inhumane practices all over the country, and I want all of you here to know that these practices are also happening here in Essex County. Our contract with ICE is making the county nearly $50 million a year. With this blood money, we are separating families that live in our own communities and forcing people to live in truly disgusting conditions. The Essex County Correctional Facility, just a few miles from here, was recently inspected by the Department of Homeland Security. This investigation cited disturbing conditions for detainees, including slimy, foul-smelling lunch meat, raw chicken leaking blood in refrigerators, and moldy shower stalls. Our county officials have claimed that these are completely decent conditions. Detainees in this facility do not receive proper health care or mental health care. As a result, at least 60 detainees have been put on suicide watch since 2015. These are just some of the horrendous details of the conditions in this facility. In the meantime, immigrants locked in cages has allowed us to pay for things that are supposed to foster community and benefit the kids in our neighborhoods, like our schools, our parks, and the Turtleback Zoo. I'm sharing this now because I know that members of this committee have expressed their support for diversity, and I can see your commitment to fostering community dialogue about issues that matter to all of us. I believe that it is vital that Millburn shows its support for our immigrant neighbors and friends. I was hoping that all of you and Diane could share your stance on our contract with ICE, and whether you would support a civilian review board to hold the freeholders accountable for what is taking place in this facility. Please stand with the local community organizations and help us end these practices that are tearing families apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you could send us some information
Sure.
through the county clerk, because I don't really have information that I could
Okay.
speak to that now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for getting up and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Phoebe Shear, 101 Oakview Terrace, Short Hills. I'd just like to ask Mr. Falcon, going back to the Woodland Road settlement. I believe you said that a settlement in principle has already been agreed to. Is that what you said?
Conceptual.
Conceptual settlement. Now, tell me exactly what you mean by that, agreed to. Has the town then...
No, there was a mediation.
I know there's a mediation.
Okay, go ahead.
What did you agree to?
If you speak louder so everyone...
There was a mediation of the Millburn mediation team, and the representatives of Silverman agreed to the basic terms.
So you've already made an agreement, is that right?
No, we made a conceptual agreement.
Okay,
There's
well,
no
you've made an agreement.
There's no
It's a con-
agreement until it is approved by this body and taking formal action.
And what happens if the town does not, if this body doesn't approve the agreement?
The case will be tried.
And then the case will be tried. What about the, would you still be able to get discovery then if you go to trial?
There's no discovery on what we're doing. The case
No,
was-
if you went to trial, you would need discovery, right?
Oh, there were then all the normal procedures that would be available.
Okay, because we were concerned because there was a document that said discovery was closed.
Yeah, that document is a computer-generated document that the administrative office of the courts sends out when it's been calculated that the time has passed
I
or
see.
is approaching when discovery would end in conventional litigation. It bears no relationship to this case, which is under the control of Judge Gardner, who sets all of the parameters, time limits. And that particular notice really had nothing to do with anything.
Who is
There was no
drafting?
discovery.
Who is drafting the documents that you will get in 2 weeks?
The attorneys for the parties.
So are you drafting them?
No.
Which attorney is drafting them?
Well, the planning board attorney for Millburn,
Mr. Buzek is
Mr.
drafting?
Cusack, who is an acknowledged expert in affordable housing and has drafted many of these agreements, will be doing the basic drafting.
And I see. I'll just close, but I would like to reinforce what Jean Cosgrove said. The project that we see, the project that we're worried about, the project that was suggested a year and a half ago, the 62 units and the 191 parking places and the 10,000 square feet of Summit Medical Group is simply not suitable for this little 1.5 acre lot. And if that is what you agreed to in principle, it's very disappointing and to the town. So I hope that you know what you agreed to. You're not going to tell us. You're going to surprise us with it so that we don't have too much time to bring in people to bother you about it. But if that's it, we're very disappointed. Thank you.
So I think I will ask the representatives from the Turtleback Zoo. Thank you, Bibi. If we could have the Turtleback Zoo. Oh, you were. Oh, I'm sorry. Please, ZooCom. I apologize.
Okay. Judy Rosenthal, 12 Marion Avenue. I strongly urge Millburn to join with Maplewood in passing a resolution opposing any further expansion of the Turtleback Zoo. Hey. I find it ironic that the county, they're not telling the public this, but they're going to use open space funding to destroy open space in order to educate children about the environment and animals. The irony, I think, is completely lost on the county executive, Mr. DiVincenzo. The county is going to argue that we need to do this to educate children. In fact, what this is going to be is an amphitheater where they parade animals in front of a crowd of about 2,000 kids. Maybe 5 of them will be paying attention. The rest will be talking to the kids next to them. And what about the animals? If these representatives really care about the animals, would they be parading these animals in front of a bunch of screaming kids? I don't think so. The county executive is also going to say, oh, we've planted 60,000 trees or whatever number it is. What he neglects to inform the public is that he's cut down that number of trees, only the mature trees that have stood there for centuries. And he's planting trees with about an 8-inch diameter in their stead that don't support the habitat, the squirrels and the birds that these mature trees do. He's also cutting down mature trees, if you go along Brookside, with ornamentals. Ornamental trees are not part of the natural habitat of the turtle, of the reservation. And lastly, there's already an amphitheater in the zoo. He's not advertising that. This is a second amphitheater. It's a complete waste of taxpayer money. When I went to the freeholders meeting last month, the public was in an uproar. The freeholders refused to listen to us. Every one of them, except for one who abstained, voted in favor of using open space funding to destroy open space. I really don't think that the taxpayers sitting in this room, when they pay their taxes, have any idea that DiVincenzo is using their money to cut down trees and build buildings, whether it's the paving over the parking lot across from the Swan Boat exhibit, whether it's paving a couple of acres of land for McClune's, whether it's the amphitheater, whether it's the multi-tier parking deck that just went up without a traffic study. I was there. The traffic engineer had no idea what time of day the study was conducted, how many cars were going in and out. It was laughable. The so-called experts that he brings in are, if they were in a court of law, I am telling you, as trial attorney, a jury would laugh them out of the courtroom. This whole thing is a travesty. The freeholders will not listen to us. They're all puppets of Mr. DiVincenzo. We need you to listen to us. We need you to pass a resolution and tell the county, join with Maplewood. I know West Orange is considering it. I'm not sure about what South Orange is doing, but please talk to these other administrations. I know that there's a concern, if we rise up against DiVincenzo, maybe he'll cut off funding for Millburn. He won't give us county funds to do stuff like repave roads, or he'll drag his feet as a form of punishment. But if everyone joins in one voice, he can't punish all the towns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Phil Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street. I want to speak on the Turtleback Zoo, but I didn't want the plastics resolution to get lost in this. I mean, I think listening to it, I think it's a terrific ordinance. I wasn't clear on what you've decided to do with it, but I think you should definitely review it, and I'd like to see a timetable very soon for how to phase this in. I think that's, as I said, that's the next step. And I think it's a great thing to do. It's the right idea. And as has been stated before, while the state drags its feet, towns need to act. And when enough towns act, the state is going to say, well, we have to follow them anyway because the majority of towns are doing this. But I think it's a really important thing. I think the research and the work done on it has been very good. About the Turtleback Zoo, I spoke about the expansion as far back as April when I was trying to find out why trees were being cut at the reservoir and never got an answer on that. After going to the freeholders meeting, I did get a letter, as I assume other people did, from Freeholder President Brendan Gill. And I just like to, and he basically said a lot of the things, really his answer to us at the time was, well, we're just getting started. Nothing has happened yet. We can't tell you much, but it's sort of like, don't worry about it because we haven't done anything yet. Not like, well, what about when something does happen? What about some transparency? So briefly, I sent him a letter and answer, and this is what I said at the time. When he called this, he referred to the groundswell of opposition, that his quote for the people who came up, so he recognized there was a big pushback on this. And I wrote to him, please do not misconstrue the point of the correctly termed groundswell of opposition to the latest plans for Turtleback expansion. The point is that area residents do not want the expansion and do not want money and energy expended to that end. So the $600,000 approved to research the feasibility of the project needs to be pulled back. The point is that your freeholder board has once again ignored the wishes of the citizens. And the point is that we therefore cannot trust you to listen to us before finalizing a decision or have confidence that you will be transparent. The point is that the flamingos were too much, the new parking garage was too much, the new bear exhibit was too much, and the amphitheater is too much. All that is at stake is the ruin of what was once a good thing, what once was a positive relationship with a community, what was once a trust in our Essex County leadership, and possibly the ruin of our precious nature preserve. You and the county executive need to listen and to humble your lavish grand designs in the interests of reason, of true need in the South Mountain Reservation, and of respect for the unspoiled natural world that sustains us. And I recognize that there are people who work with the zoo and myself as someone who's gone there many times, who feel good about the zoo, feel good about what's being done there. My point is that it has gone beyond the limits of what it should do. And so whatever someone might say about education and everything else, this is something that is just, it's just too much now. We can see it in the traffic, we can see it in the runoff, we can see it in the trees being cut down, and it needs to stop. So before we even get to any ideas about what good it's going to do or not do, it's against the whole idea of the reservation. It's gone beyond the bounds of what it was intended, and so it needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go to hear from some of the other Zoom people.
Yep, the zoo people are gonna get
I'm Bill Horvat from 40 Whitney Road, and I'm one of the lucky residents that got a notice of hearing on Millburn Township Ordinance 253719, amending the zoning ordinance. And in particular, I'd like to bring attention to a strikeout of the existing requirement that residential properties developed in the and basically in the business district will no longer have required parking. None. And I believe that that's short-sighted. You know, if you look at it from the benefit of anyone who would rent or own such a unit, they'll need parking. If you look at it from the perspective of the residents on a side street that's 1 block away, they need the parking on their street. They don't necessarily need to share it with new people who could have their own parking. And finally, if there develops a shortage of parking as a result of this change, the township will be asked to step in and take care of it. And I ask you, if that requires another parking deck, the cost we're talking about is something like $10,000 or $20,000 per parking spot. And should the taxpayers pay for that, or should it be the responsibility of the parties that are involved with designing and developing and implementing such residential housing in the downtown area? Now, you've probably heard the argument that the world has changed, that now with short-term car rentals, with Uber and whatever, that, you know, we don't need as many cars. However, I don't believe that that's so likely. I have family living in Denver, and we see it. We see the cars to go parked on the street. So you may not have the resident's car anymore, but the resident's driving the car to go, and it's there. The Uber driver, the Lyft driver, he's got to park his car somewhere. The need for parking doesn't just go away because of these new solutions. And the train is not enough. Case in point, I moved here over 40 years ago because of the train line, because I could work in Newark. Every year I got sent to a different location. So I was in Florham Park, back to Newark. I was in Roseland, back to Newark. So net, I ended up not being able to eliminate a car from the family. And I think that's a very likely thing to occur here as well. So there will be a need for parking. The exact amount we don't know. But I think you should ensure that that parking is provided when new buildings and developments occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Melvin Singer. I live in Short Hills, Delwick Lane. I was former on the board. I was also on the Environmental Commission, so that was about 8 or 10 years ago. I got involved in some flooding issues. The town was persistent with flooding issues. And I got involved in a study on the dry wells to see how effective they were, and got funding from the federal government to do a study, which I participated in. And I was going to give a report, but one of the former mayors after Sammy Haymoff, he was not interested in hearing the report, which we got $180,000 to do the study. I'm upset a little bit about everything related to all the parking and everything related to the lake, because the lake is getting blue-green algae, and it's becoming, sometimes during the summer, there are fish that are dying, and we have problems with that. Nobody's looking at the drainage that's necessary up there to make the parking lots porous and make sure that we're not getting too much runoff, and we're taking runoff that's contaminating the lake. So Turtleback has their needs, and they have the reasons for what they're trying to do. They can be done probably in an environmentally conscious way, like we did with the cutouts, which everybody got all upset at, but that was done because we were trying to limit the amount of flow of water that was ending up in the sewer system. We've also, since the institution of the ordinance of putting the dry wells, we've cut out a lot of flooding that we've had in several of the neighborhoods. The dry wells have worked to improve flooding issues in town. So working on a master plan that deals with flooding issues, because we don't want to get flooding in the downtown. We don't want to have flooding because of things. We want to make sure, even if they build an amphitheater, that could be done in a very gorgeous and environmental acceptable way. It needs to be addressed in a way that would make sense both for the Turtleback Zoo and for the whole area. Anything that we do, parking lots should not just be asphalt. They have to be designed in a way to cut the runoff that's putting all the organic matter, and it's getting into that lake. So it's important that we look at this whole thing on an environmentally conscious way. It's like the plastic bags, they're talking about the plastic. We want to look at things in an environmentally conscious way. And it's important that we attack these problems that way. If we don't do it, we're only defeating ourselves, and we're only hurting ourselves, and we're hurting the community in the long term.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Andrew Morgan, 328 Millburn Avenue, Millburn Deli. I wrote this down because I'm terrible talking in front of people. I am a little depressed that you didn't take in the Millburn Deli carve-out, but anyway, the plastic ordinance. I won't talk much about polystyrene. That's right, yeah, just the Millburn Deli. I won't talk about polystyrene because I think that there really are better alternatives that already exist, and I think if you're using it, it's probably just because it's cheaper at this point. And while I think that it makes more sense to make the plastic straw ordinance to be ask for it, because for ADA reasons I'd have to give them out anyway, so essentially that's what it is. I can't ask you if you have a disability, so anybody who asks for a straw is going to get one. But there are two parts of the ordinance that concern me, and the first is the blanket ban on plastic bags. It creates a few issues for me. The most important is food safety. I don't know if any of you saw the horrifying study that they did recently for delivery drivers, that 28% of them admitted to eating or tasting the food that they were delivering. That's 28% of the people who admitted it. So you have to figure there's more in there. So anyway, to wit, we now use tamper-proof plastic bags that I can seal the food in, and you don't see, they can only be opened once, and once they're open, the handle's gone. So the consumer knows that their food has not been tampered with, and there is currently no good substitute for that. there's another issue. I was researching this, and I think Mr. Levy alluded to it earlier, is that there's been studies done in towns that have banned plastic bags, and it's shown that things such as small 4-gallon and 8-gallon garbage bag sales increase 120% because people don't have those bags they're getting from stores to use to line their garbage pails in the bathrooms and things like that. So with that increase in plastic purchases at the store, and with the paper bags are just objectively worse for the environment overall. I have studies that I'm happy to link anyone to that show that. But this study I read on NPR and had links to the actual study said that because of the increase in plastic sales and because of the increased use in paper, it is actually increases greenhouse emissions overall. And so lastly, the last thing that I really worry about is the 5-cent fee suggested per bag. It feels really impractical just on a ground level as the guy who has to enforce this. So when someone calls on the phone and they order stuff, I have no idea if it's going to need 1 bag, 2 bags, 5 bags. And if they're paying me and then I go to bag the order and it's another bag, like I have to call them back and ask for a nickel. Like it feels super impractical. So that doesn't even talk about orders placed via DoorDash or Uber Eats. Like they need bags, and how am I collecting that fee? Like, do I have to contact every order that comes in online and figure out how many bags I need and then ask them to charge a quarter? On top of that, I know that it was billed, at least in some of the meetings, as a benefit to me because it's the 5 cents isn't going to the town, it's going to the business. If someone's charging that, it's actually costing me money. It's usually about 6 to 8 cents a swipe. So if somebody charges a bag, I lost money on that transaction. And I just wonder, like, what if I call somebody tell them they owe me a quarter for a bag and they refuse to pay it? Like, do I not send their order out? So I understand the desire to want to do better for our community environment, and I appreciate the efforts of the Environmental Commission and the thought process behind all this. But I just feel like there are better ways to go about this. I would ask that you would pass an ordinance that would require consumers to ask for a straw or a plastic bag, or at a minimum allow bags that keep food safe to be permitted, or a carve out. And above all else, please do not force me to make someone run to their car for a nickel when they come in to grab a bag to take their food home. I just don't think people come from their office primed to carry a bag. Like when they're going to a grocery store, you know you're going to be buying stuff. Maybe you have a cloth bag. But if you're working at your office and people want you to go out and grab 4 things, you don't have a bag with you. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki Parker. I'm not from Millburn or Short Hills. I'm from Scotch Plains, Allenby Lane. I worked at the Turtleback Zoo in 1972 when I was in college. And so I have always had a fondness for it. And when I finished with my work life, I came back to Turtleback Zoo as a volunteer. And one of the reasons that I'm there is because I'm passionate about animals. I'm passionate that they will have a place in our world in the future. And that will depend on our new generation coming up, because if our kids don't care about animals and care about the world that they're growing up in, they're not going to have any incentive to save those lives. So for me, Turtleback Zoo serves a really important purpose to educate children about wildlife and also about conservation issues. 2 years ago, we actually brought up the idea of banning straws at Turtleback Zoo. So, I totally concur with your green team, because it is important. You may not have all the details down pat, you may need to work on it, but I think that as a future, we all need to look at those issues and come up with a viable alternative to continuing to do this to our world. I know that people in this community, people in Essex County, are not happy about the zoo's expansion. I can tell you that I've been to a lot of zoos all over the country and in other countries, and Essex County is a gem that they should be proud of and that they should be proud to have in their backyard. I understand people don't like change. They don't want to see things change. They want things to stay the same as they have always been. But I do believe that you need to look at the future and all the good that Turtleback could do for the next generation of children. And again, the amphitheater is for teaching about conservation. It's for teaching about these animals that in the wild, their habitats are being encroached on by humans. And, you know, we need to start with today's youth. And I know they're getting more in schools because when I'm out on grounds, a lot of these kids know more than I do sometimes. So we're doing something right as a nation because these kids are educated, but I want to see you be able to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Beth Greenspan. I live at 4 Barry Lane in Short Hills. I've lived here for about 10 years, and this is the second town hall meeting I've been to. I came here tonight in support of the ordinance to get rid of single-use plastics in our community. We have gotten so used to taking a bag, using it for 1 second, and then throwing it out when we get home. There's plastics in the water, there's plastic in our food, and it's not getting any better. It's going to get worse and worse if we don't make a change. I am personally invested in this because my kids, they came home from school and they've been telling me what they've learned. A lot of my friends, they don't care to educate themselves. They learn from their kids. My son went to a program at Deerfield and he came home and he said he wanted a bamboo toothbrush because he heard that the plastic toothbrushes can't be recycled. So I'm being inspired by my kids every day and all the things that they're learning. And I'm trying to make these changes in my home, and I'm trying to inspire my friends to make these changes. The things that were proposed in this ordinance are very, very small in the grand scheme of things. I know that it will affect businesses, and everyone's going to be forced to change. I cannot tell you how much I hate paper straws. But I was recently at the beach, and I tried a bamboo straw, and it was great. And one of them was broken, so I just got another one. And they're very inexpensive, and it's an easy change to make. And I strongly suggest that if we're going to do anything, that's a very easy thing to change. As far as the Millburn Deli is concerned, I go into Millburn Deli almost every day. I love their salads. And I asked them not to give me a plastic bag and not to give me plastic silverware. And I think you could staple a paper bag so no one gets inside of it. And I think there's things that need to be worked out, but I don't want this just to go away and us to just say it's easier just to keep these plastic bags around, because one day it's not going to be so easy and we're going to regret not doing this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie Heller, 56 Byron and 343 Millburn Avenue. Just want to take a moment. This is my first Township Committee meeting since this board has sat, so I just want to take a second. Thank you.
I guess we can say welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Couple of things. First, if I may ask possibly of Counselor some questions. I'm certainly going to be over 3 minutes if you allow. We don't have to answer. Mostly follow-up questions of things to either Counselor or to Alex. Canoe Brook. What's our status of Canoe Brook Road with reference to not having it opened to the poet section? It's been 8 months since I've been here.
Well, the road has been acquired. All interest in the road has been acquired from the country club and from the water company. It has been vacated. It's no longer a thoroughfare. I did notice the other day that somebody moved those barriers, but they were put back pretty quickly. I don't know what that was all about, but there's...
Right, but to my point, the town owns the right-of-way, the former street.
That's correct.
All right, so if the litigation...
There was a clause put in this is the first thing I did
Good.
joining. There's a clause put in the developer's agreement that may or may not have been intentional or not, that prevents the developer from taking any action to open that up. Contractually, they cannot.
What about residents? What about the police department? What about the fire department? What about the Board of Education taking action to open that road because Kennedy Parkway is flooded? And if somebody can't get to the mall or to the parking deck, or God forbid a carjacking, that could never happen. What stops the town from being on the receiving end? As you know, anybody can sue. Now I ask you whether there's a probability of losing that lawsuit. I would tell you there's a possibility for either emergency reasons. My point of referencing this, it's a real good start. We had talked once upon a time about whether Green Acres, there could be a chain. I own the property once upon a time in Parsippany for fire access. There was a chain across it. To make some other attempt other than this, I'm going to tell you right now, when people go and live there, and God forbid, the confluence of an accident, the flood, traffic on Kennedy Parkway, there's going to be litigation, then there's going to be a lawsuit to open that road up.
Wasn't there supposed to be a dog shelter there? Wasn't that part of
All
the...
right, I can answer, not on my 3 minutes, but as to Bork and Mount and that whole fallacy of that was fantasy, and that was to answer, that was never real. Livingston has a new, there's lots of people that know lots about that, but let's do that another day. So if we could just follow up on that, perhaps another night. I know it's a long night tonight, so. Talking about just following up on some of the questions people have asked about county open space, discussions that I've had certainly with some of you. It's on every person's tax bill, every commercial property tax bill. We pay an awful lot of money into county open space, and we have for a lot of years. A lot of towns get direct money back, whether it's North Caldwell, Verona, Cedar Grove. To my knowledge, I don't know of any direct funds. That's not money that goes back into paving. That's part of a whole different budget. So the question I have is, in terms of following up, and I don't even think this would be the place, but I noticed we still don't have crosswalks on Glen Avenue going into the reservation. County is the owner of the reservation. We don't have crosswalks getting from the train, and you do see people, that parking lot is overflowed. That parking lot is a disaster from the perspective of environmental. It's eroding away. May I suggest that if we don't know, do we know the total amount of money that we as a community give to county open space each year?
Approximately 1.5 million.
Is there any, other than community development block grants, which I think is out of a different place, is there any way of determining what we receive back in terms of open space funds?
Direct funds, yes, but not, sort of indirectly, or what might be claimed from open space throughout the county.
Just to keep it, if we can follow on sort of that vein, again, we may have a little more opportunity with the county than we have in past years to request dollars, input, of having certainly a lot of people here are interested in the reservation tonight, but certainly places that we can utilize, and not just on reservation, but certainly on county roads. Millburn Avenue could be Park Avenue. By example, we could have a nice greenscape in the middle of the road. Not sure that it's fit, but I grew up in that area, but it may be. But there's places to get money from the county, and we should be making a greater effort. Just staying out of the downtown for a moment. We have a hotel and apartments that are going to be opening, I think, probably as early as late 2020. Apartments typically lease out just following the trend throughout the, let's just call it the county, about 20 per month, right? Sometimes 15. There's other developers that will do it quicker if they just want to lease up and lower the prices. Have we done any budgeting to determine what sort of dollars, not just from the tax, but I believe we also have a hotel tax? And I've asked the question.
We did ask Jason to look into that. I mean, like what the ratables will be when it's all
Ratables
up and
and
running.
correlating that, and
Yeah.
I've asked before what, I can go look, but I've chosen not to, but how much money do we get from the Hilton as part of the hotel tax? We're gonna get a hotel tax, I think, in addition to a real estate tax. So we're gonna have a whole lot of dollars coming in. It's sort of a one-time shot, two-time, it'll help keep the rate down for a period of time, but in terms of budgeting and what we have available for, whether it be bonding or spending of money or buying out the Silverman Group to create green space there, that we just sort of kicks the can down the road in terms of the affordable housing. It has to go somewhere. that maybe it doesn't need to go there, but there's a pool of money available to us. County open space, that's DPW. We did a report, a study. Did that come back? I missed that.
Let Alex take
Yeah,
that.
yeah, the report has come back. We're setting up a meeting with the ad hoc by the end of the week, by the end of the month.
Is that report available to the public?
It hasn't been reviewed by the ad hoc yet, but I mean, it's out there. It's a public document.
But where would it be read?
You'd have to request it. At this point, it's not on the website, but if you wanted
Through an Oprah request or just
Yes.
I request?
Either way.
Request.
No, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Briefly, just some short downtown issues, and mostly Alex and others. Alex, we've talked for almost 3 years. There's 2 abandoned utility poles, one on Main Street and one on Millburn Avenue, that are never going to have wires, are abandoned. Why are they still there? I have one in front of my building, there's one on Main Street. All right, yeah, I'm gonna, if we may, and we'll come back to it, because there's a series of just short questions like that. There are utility poles that are supposed to get rewired, which predates all of you, predates Alex. Nobody's here at fault other than those who were here. A lot of utility poles are supposed to get rewired on Main Street, including the infamous utility pole sitting in the middle of New Road. I don't think there's any plans for JCP&L to ever rewire that. I think there is a way to reconfigure that intersection if it's not going to be rewired. It's almost 3 years. So if we can look at that sort of thing. Bollards. Bollards were put up instead of a curb to provide safety, even though they weren't crash tested. Nevertheless, there's been a lot of planters and other things and signs that have been put up to try to keep the cars in the street. It's fine, but there's still a lot of bollards missing. I think intentionally. But some of the bollards that are now missing don't have planters. There literally is the ability for cars to just drive up over the concrete. That's a short-term thing. Bollards out, bollards in. Put them all back, take them all out. Figure it out. This has nothing to do with complete streets on how it was designed. It does have to do with the implementation and what is supposed to be. That leads into concrete and dirt and striping and other sorts of things for another day. Upper Millburn Avenue. Alex, we've had this discussion, and you put up through the county last year, a blinking sign about pedestrians have right-of-way to cross, and it was at the St. Rose west corner on Millburn Avenue last year, to pedestrians have right-of-way at the crosswalks. Well, there's only one crosswalk at Campbell Road on Upper Millburn Avenue. The other 3 intersections, you're going up through Baltusol and like, don't have crosswalks, and brought this up. There's also, to the best of my knowledge, unless it's changed in the last week, there's no speed limit sign anywhere on either side of Upper Millburn Avenue. It bothers me a little bit less now because unfortunately the Squirrel and the Bee is closed, but I can tell you that I cross the streets very well, but I would always be very careful on the other side of the street as the cars are coming from Morris Turnpike into town. We've lessened the speed limit on Millburn Avenue, in front of the high school, from 30 to 25. But once you make that turn on Morris Avenue, stand there one day to see the first car coming, unless it's, whether it's a little old lady or a young 17-year-old, whoever may be that.
I know you have a lot of good points. We still haven't gotten to our business portion of
I
the meeting.
watched.
Where are we?
I
can't
watched.
see it.
I watched a lot of other people talk for a number of minutes.
I'm
but
asking you. Hey, guys, shh.
I watched a lot of other people talk
Terry.
for.
Phil, please. Okay. Just tell us your few more points, please.
I think I'm pretty
And
close, but just
we can talk again.
last complete streets traffic on Main Street. Took away 2 parking spaces. We're coming back to school again. The traffic backs up all the way to Springfield. You can see it on navigation. There's a way around it. There's a way to stop it. The stop line, as we all here in this room know, was moved back 25 feet by the town administrator with no doubt engineering and other help. I'm telling you here and now, and having spoken with engineers, the reason, assuming Complete Streets, McCormick, and Arterial did their work properly, that intersection timing was set up to allow for the traffic to get through. They didn't intentionally make Main Street back up, and they didn't anticipate cars turning into the South Mountain area or turning into the Washington School area. So either they really screwed up, or maybe 2 cars less per light change, which is about 1 minute and 20 seconds. When you take times that times 30 light changes approximately per hour, 50 cars in theory can back up.
So we have a new traffic engineer, and we have tasked him to study these things, and we'll add that to his list, because I know there's a problem backing all the way to Springfield. We all get it. We see it.
All right, if I can come back another time in terms of some of the utility pole, particularly the easier answers, parking spaces. Last, we have a new, I have a fire hydrant.
Mhm.
It's 22 feet approximately. The one in front of old Casitas is, I think, 45 feet. There's parking spaces that easily can be added in the downtown that will bring instant shoppers back. We've walked it, you've walked it, others have walked it. I don't see any of the parking spaces having been added back onto Millburn Avenue. So if we can, and we can certainly talk about this another time. Sounds like September 3rd maybe is again going to be a busy meeting, but I'm happy to discuss it any time outside of the public domain. Be pleased to do that. Thank you.
One more comment, and then we'll let the zoo people. No, it's okay.
This
Oh,
is a quick question.
please. Just
Hi, Jackie Carlucci, 24 Taylor Street, Millburn. My question is someone or some board keeping track of the variances that you're granting for businesses or developments with no parking requirements? Like, do you know how many you've said okay to? And, when is there a limit?
So the zoning board or the planning board would keep.
Do they
keep track.
do they talk to each other?
Well, they keep a list of those things that they're granting. So in other words, if the zoning board grants numerous variances for one particular item, then they would include that in their report.
But you don't have like a total for the year. I'm living this, personally. I live on Taylor Street, so a business came into the neighborhood and was granted no parking requirements. So I know they need 30 spots every half hour. So that's 30 spots that are taking up. What's the total where you cap it and say, okay, you have to have on-site parking? Do you have a number, or does the planning board tell the zoning board, we've already approved 200 spots, maybe take it back? I mean, there's got to be some kind of.
How could someone have on-site parking if they don't have a parking lot? Like, I'm not following.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so the requirement
Right, I
would
know.
be you need parking, right? Because there's an ordinance for that.
Right.
So you could go to the zoning board and say, well, I don't want any parking, and they say, okay, here's your variance. So you're approving things, but nobody's keeping tally of how many spots you're allowing now on the street. So we've already had a traffic problem downtown. Now Taylor Street is completely full, and it has affected the quality of my life and my children's life. So I just wanted to know if there's someone keeping a tally, or if the planning board is talking to the zoning board, which you can, will get back to me.
Yes.
But I just wanted to put it out there that maybe somebody
point.
should look into that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you want to speak before the zoo people? Please, come on up. The zoo representatives, I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
I am Mark Biggis. I have property at 688-700 Mars Turnpike.
Hi.
Hi, and thank you for your efforts on the public's behalf. I know it's a late night. I'd like to request on 2537-19 that you consider reducing the parking ratios for buildings that are under 12,000 square feet. I think the cutoff right now is 25,000 square feet.
Wait, is this on the ordinance that's?
Yeah.
on?
It is, yes.
It is.
You know what, that will come up as soon as we get out of this public comment period. There'll be a hearing on that, and you can make whatever points.
That will be tonight, or?
That's right, tonight, yes.
The second reading.
Second meeting, okay.
Second
Do you-
reading, yeah.
Do you think you're
I'm
gonna?
sorry, that's not in one of the ordinances that we have on for second?
No, it's second reading tonight.
Yes, it's a second reading, public hearing, specifically on that.
All right, if I'm not able to still be awake at that point, may I write a letter in support of my
It'll be
position?
too late.
Right.
Wait 15 minutes.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
You can write a letter, it'll be ignored.
Well, we'll read it. Okay, anybody else want to have any public comment before the zoo representatives are asked to make their presentation? Okay. Guys, thank you. If you would just introduce yourself.
Sure.
Good evening, Mayor. Dan Salvante, Director of the Essex County Park System. Couple things I think I can clear up real quick. The Locust Glen Avenue area, the Essex County has worked with the South Mountain Conservancy. A grant application had been submitted with Green Acres. We're just waiting for the funding to come back on that project, and it's part of our 2020 projects to address the parking and the road and the crosswalk over there. So I'll address that. In addition, there have been 3 open space grants back to the townships. We will have one for actually 2020, which will be going out in the early fall. The grant applications for 2020.
Back to the township.
Correct. Correct. Mayor, what I'd like to do tonight, I'm here as the director. I have my deputy director, Kate Hartwick, and our zoo director, Michael Kerr, will come up later on. But I just want to give an overview of the Essex County Turtleback Zoo and some of the things that we're quite proud of. If you all recall, the history tells us in 1996, Essex County's Turtleback Zoo was possibly being closed by a previous administration. And at that time, the zoo was in deplorable condition. The upkeep of the animals, the general facility, needed a tremendous amount of work to bring it to where it is today. 8 years passed with a previous administration. The DiFincenzo administration came into office, and we are quite proud to say not only has the Essex County Turtleback Zoo have gone under a facelift, but the entire county park system, which touches almost every municipality in Essex County, has seen a tremendous rebirth, and it's quite obvious by the residents that have enjoyed that. Which brings us to next year, which we'll celebrate, believe it or not, the 125th anniversary of the Essex County Park System, which was the first county park system in the country. But tonight we're here to talk about Turtleback Zoo. So let me give you some facts and some numbers of what happens at Turtleback Zoo. First of all, we're proud of our Zoological Society. Currently, there's over 13,516 members, families, that are members of the Zoological Society. And out of that number, here in Millburn, there's 439 families that represents over 2,020 individuals that have these memberships at our facility. Our facility has quite an extensive education program. During the course of the year, now keep in mind, a zoo, a lot of weather dependent as far as the attendance numbers. Well, we're quite proud in our education program, over 200,000 children have participated. When I say that number, keep in mind you have school groups that go to the zoo. They're limited in the times they can come to the zoo, which is from April. During the summer months, we have our camp program. That's 200,000 children to participate at our zoo, which falls into our education program. In that number that I just told you, that represents approximately 1,800 different organizations that have visited the zoo this past year. We have various camps throughout the year. One that we're quite proud of is our summer camp program, which is an education program of close to 500 participants during the summer. In addition to that, the Essex County Park System only had 17 parks if you go back and check the history. Under the DiFincenzo administration, we've increased 17 to 23. That represents 500 acres of additional parkland to bring our inventory of acreage within the park system close to 7,000 acres. And we are quite proud of that as we continue to add to the inventory of the Essex County system. Mayor, as you brought up before in your opening remarks, there is restriction on money, how it's being utilized. It only can be used for the 4 items that you mentioned from the Open Space Trust Fund. Tonight, as I mentioned to you before, we have Mike Kerr. He will give you a presentation on the proposal of this project that we have just begun the design phase. So with that, I'd like to call on Zoo Director Mike Kerr.
I just have a question
Yes.
for Mr. Salvante. There's an allegation earlier made that 60,000 trees would be felled in order to support this project.
Sure.
Can you respond to that?
Yes, let me respond to that. The 60,000, I don't know where that came from, but the tree restoration, or not, I shouldn't say this, the S-curve project of South Orange Avenue, 6,000 trees were planted as part of that project in the reservation. So the 60,000, I don't know where that number came from. I'm only telling you that 6,000 were added.
Will 60,000 trees be removed in order to support the expansion of the Turtleback Zoo?
No.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Kerr, Director of Turtleback Zoo. At the core of our mission is conservation. We really are focused on developing emotional ties to wildlife and fostering appreciation for our natural world. Through educational presentations, which we also involve our ambassador animals who are trained to interact with people and be able to help form those ties, we provide experience for our guests to form some kind of connection with nature and with the animals. So with the amphitheater, I think something that at least I've been reading and hearing from people is it's a venue that's going to host like rock concerts or something like that. And that's not what it is. What we're looking to do is create a space that we can engage a larger amount of our guests. So right now through the spring and summer season, we see around 2,200 students a day at the zoo during the week. And right now, we can only provide direct programming to about 150 of those students. So we identified the need for some kind of space to provide more direct programming to those students. So the amphitheater, like Dan mentioned, is right now in very early stages of development. It's not looking to drive the gate and increase our attendance. It's looking to provide programming for our existing guest base. So it's going to seat about 500 people, not 2,000 or whatever. I've also heard crazy numbers like that. That's what we're kind of looking at right now. It's going to consist of theater-style seating to accommodate those people, and it's going to have a stage. I also heard our existing amphitheater was brought up. That amphitheater is not for educational presentations. It's not for our animal space. It's for like right now we have some magicians and things that entertain the kids. So, and it's also right in the center of a zoo. It does not meet modern zoological practices in order to do the presentations we need. You can also travel 360 degrees around the stage, which is not safe for what our needs are. So it just does not accommodate what we need with our programming. Right now, we have about 147 at-risk animals that are declared by the IUCN, and a lot of those come with additional programming, like our African penguins. In the last 80 years, they've lost almost 90% of their density. So that's an animal that we have ambassadors that are trained to come. They go to classrooms, they go to libraries. We like to really focus on them. The rest of the animals also have programming developed just like the penguin, and that's something that we will showcase in the theater style. So I think a big thing that we can pull away from it is the name is very confusing for everyone. It's not going to host rock concerts, things like that. It's meant to provide educational experience.
So I guess a couple of rumors we're hearing also that you were planning on building a grizzly bear.
That's correct. That is not in the plan.
That's not happening.
Correct.
That a huge 22,000 or side tank was going to be part of
Yeah,
this.
so that was out there as well, and that is not in the plan.
Okay. Grizzly bears. Oh, $16 million. That was a figure that was being thrown around. That this project would cost.
That was, I think, connected to the bear exhibit you saw, and that is not.
Okay, so that's definitely not on the table.
No.
Okay, so no grizzly bears, not 16 million. I did hear at our meeting at the zoo that day that it's 1 acre of property would be needed for this.
Yeah, I'm not really comfortable speaking on that because
Right.
I'm,
Like a roundabout area. But they did say that it would have to follow all DEP regulations as
Correct.
far as what the gentleman talking about drainage.
Correct.
That it would, if there's runoff there, it has to be addressed. They can't just put a impervious surface there. It would collect the runoff water. I know we had other projects in town, they actually had to improve the situation.
Yeah.
They were building parking lot or whatever.
I can also tell you with other exhibits that I've seen and been part of the development of, all those things are looked at, and especially with the runoff, and we create retention basins or whatever we need to address those.
Right. And it has to be environmentally, there'd be an environmental impact.
Correct.
So I think what Maplewood was speaking to, that they would like transparency, more transparency from the county, from the zoo. Is there a master plan what would be presented to the public so we don't get in this kind of situation again where the rumors take over.
So, Mayor, we're amending our master plan. It will be available by the end of this year,
The end of 2019.
2019, correct?
Okay. So that's something we can look forward to seeing.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I have a question for the zoo director.
Yeah, well-
What about the public that may have questions for the?
They already had to speak, Jackie, we'll be here. We can't have a back and forth dialogue, it just won't be, so, but, from the Township Committee,
I have a
please.
question for the director of the zoo.
Go ahead.
It's been asserted in this,
Okay,
all right. Well, there have been allegations that Mr. DiVincenzo has lied and other people have lied too, none of which are supported. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
It's been asserted today that with this new programming, which will attract more visitors to the zoo, that the animals will suffer in some way, that the animals react differently when there are small crowds or bigger crowds, those kinds of things. As a director of the zoo, do you find that to be an accurate statement?
Yes, I find that inaccurate. I think I mentioned before too, we're not really looking to drive the gate with this project or increase attendance. And any animals that we use in our programming are trained specifically for that, so that we expose them to people. So that's the purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, so, thank you for coming. I think that we dispelled some of the rumors. I know that, like any other situation, people will come out on the negative. I think when you have heard from more of the South, I know we have 439 family members from Millburn. I think there was 700 from West Orange, 500 from Maplewood, and what's the other town? Maplewood, oh, South Orange.
Yeah.
So, what has the feedback been from the members? Like, what have they been talking to you about? And
Mayor, I mean, again, most of our zoological supporters of the Turtleback Zoo, just based on the numbers of our Zoo members that come on a daily basis, which averages 1,500, maybe to 2,000 on a daily day, I think their support is there for this type of a project. And again, it's not going to draw the gate, like Mike said. It's providing a service when you're inside the zoo to bring a larger group to do the education component.
And if I misspoke about the environmental, I meant they have to follow DEP regulations. Okay. No, but Judy, okay. But they'll have to follow what regulations? Okay. Phil, okay, just one last statement,
When I
because
was at the Freeholders meeting
Yeah.
a while back, the Freeholders approved and sent to the Open Space Committee a resolution that tied together the expansion of the bear exhibit with, I believe it was Brookdale Park baseball fields. So if that's so both those projects are gone, that they're just gone, I just want to know as point of fact, because that seems strange. I mean, they're over?
Again, Mayor, we submitted Green Acres applications, back then for a bear exhibit and also for the improvements to Brookdale Park athletic fields. Again, those are grants that we've submitted to Green Acres, part of the Green Acres program. If you want to be in it, you have to submit applications and so forth and so on. As Mr. Kerr said this evening, we're not moving forward on the bear exhibit.
Okay, so that means it is off.
No bears.
No bears.
That doesn't matter. He said no bears.
Mayor, I think I answered the
Yes,
bear
you did.
question.
No bears, okay.
This is not our debate. This is not our debate.
The thing about the tank.
10 seconds.
Characterized as a rumor was presented to the public by these people. They're the ones who told us there was going to be a tank there. Now they're calling it a rumor.
Mayor, again, a request for proposals went out for quotations to come back. We had a conceptual in that proposal, so they knew what they were looking at. We've decided not to go forward with the water feature.
Okay, so no water feature, no grizzlies, not $16 million.
Correct.
Okay, and the plans for the amphitheater is not even finalized, so you don't know how much.
Correct, because we're
acre
still in the
is.
design phase.
Okay, so I think we have to wait for that design phase to come back, and then there'll be another freeholder meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so, thank you. All right, on with the business portion of our meeting. Thank you all, have been incredibly patient tonight. The committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. The resolutions listed on the consent agenda are as follows. Okay, we're losing our people. Bills list. Authorize purchase and installation of Shaw Sports turf field from Sourcewell National Co-op. Authorize cancellation of capital account fund balances. Approval to submit a grant application, execute a contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the Slayton Drive road improvements from White Oak Ridge to Hartshorn Drive. Requesting approval of items of revenue and appropriation for distracted driving. Authorize change of monetary amount of petty cash funds and change. This was one of the recommendations from our auditor that we're putting into action. Support of New Jersey League of Municipalities petition for rulemaking to amend the Uniform Construction Code. Authorize execution of the First Amendment to the 1990 sewer agreement with Township of Livingston for sanitary sewer services. Confirm appointment to the Environmental Commission. Confirm appointment to the Local Assistance Board and approval of raffle tickets. Public discussion restricted to questions on the consent agenda only. Any questions from the committee on the consent agenda items?
Yes, one,
Oh, go, please.
just one point of order.
Please.
We have 19-191 as part of our packet, but 19-191 is,
It's not part of the final agenda that was provided to the public.
it's not? I'm look,
Yes.
what's that?
We're good, yes, it's not part of the final agenda. That was the draft agenda, so it was pulled before it was public.
Was there an email on that?
Yes.
All right, I must have missed it. Thank you.
Okay, we have a member from the public who has a consent agenda item comment only.
Carrie Heller, 56 Byron. The turf field, very much in support of anything that creates more field space. Hopefully this is not the last endeavor as we hopefully continue to work with East Orange Water Reserve. I do have a concern about this because I've been involved in other towns and watched. Creating a turf field is like creating an impervious surface. So my first question is, shame they left. Is there an environmental impact statement?
There is drainage that is, it's installed with the drainage.
Correct. So grass absorbs, dirt absorbs groundwater. The fields, there's stone, there's sand, there's pipes. There's a stream immediately adjacent to the field. The water, in essence, if you were to build a building on that field, you'd have to go through a whole process, which a lot of people talked about tonight. You'd have to create detention. I'm not sure 100% when you have a 1-inch rain, 2-inch rain, 3-inch rain, which we've had several of them over the course of an hour this summer. I think we should be bringing in our hydrologist, Hatchmont, or whatever their new name is. I urge you not to approve and sign a contract until you know even whether we need to go to DEP. I did do a FEMA check today. The field is not in a flood zone, but the stream, as I think we all know, is the floodway. So any water that goes into that stream goes into our downtown, goes into Taylor Park, goes into the Washington section, portions of the South Mountain area where the two streams meet. All for it, but it's got to be done the right way.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mayor Phil Eglo?
Yes. Okay, resolution 19192. Tara, Committeewoman Prupus, I believe this is your resolution to read? It's about the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board.
Thanks.
I don't think it's
I don't
anybody's
have
particular.
a resolution.
Oh, I thought she was reading it.
No, it's just
Oh,
a-
I'm
We're
sorry.
just- That's all right.
Oh, so where am I reading from? Just here?
Just a motion to
You're sponsoring.
Okay. Are there any final comments or questions from the committee pertaining to resolution 19192? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Mayor Phil Eglo?
Yes.
Thank you.
2537, where is that?
In the upper right corner.
Is this
In
here?
the upper right corner of the ordinance.
Here.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Oh, it was here, sorry. Okay. I present for consideration ordinance entitled 2537-19. Ordinance amending and supplementing the Township of Millburn Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. Ordinance 2537-19 was referred to the Planning Board for review. The board reported that it found the ordinance to be not inconsistent with the master plan and suggested changes in the text, which the township attorney has concluded do not substantially alter the substance of the ordinance. Mr. Falcon will review the changes, please.
We can save time if, Christine, was the report from the planning board given to the members of the township committee?
It was, and it's attached to this ordinance tonight as
Okay,
well.
then you have the ordinance before you as revised in accordance with those changes, which are minor, and you have the report of the planning board pertaining to that, so you can proceed to the hearing, and then if you are satisfied that they are in fact minor changes, which they are, you can adopt it as amended.
Would you just say what those minor changes were? Do you have them?
Well, in section 301-27-1, the word use was removed. Indoor commercial recreation use is now just indoor commercial recreation. Word dwelling was revised to say dwellings, which was a correct grammatical change. 301-60B and 301-60D were combined, which resulted in no change in the text other than to combine them into one section from two. And the reference to the change in 606-61B3 to apartments over stores has been changed to residential, a minor clarification, which does not substantially alter the ordinance.
Right, thank you. I declare the hearing open. Oh, Paul, I'm sorry. Yeah. I think I'm getting loopy here, okay. So we have our planner here, Paul Phillips, to explain this for the public.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. So the purpose of this ordinance is essentially threefold. Number one, it's designed to clean up some current ordinance inconsistencies, largely definitional. Number two, it's to provide for site plan exemption in cases where there is a change of use, but no increase in the required parking or any expansion of the building footprint. And then lastly, and importantly, it's designed to implement a number of the recommendations in the 2018 master plan. And namely, that would be allowing for three-story buildings in the B4 district, which is the downtown district, and also expanding the permitted uses in a number of the business districts, including B2, B3, B4, and the CMO district. And also providing definitions for those expanded uses and also providing parking standards for those expanded uses. In the interest of time, I'll be happy to answer questions. I'm not going to go through everything that's in the ordinance, but I would like to talk about two things. One is the issue of the building height. And in essence, as I mentioned, there was a master plan recommendation to consider three-story buildings in the district. As I think most people in this room are aware, there are already examples of three-story buildings in the B4 district. We assigned a 40-foot height limit to that three-story allowance, and that was based on a number of factors, including the definition of building height in the ordinance, which is basically the building's highest point. And there are some exclusions for rooftop appurtenances. However, those exclusions do not include parapet walls. So we thought the 40-foot height would be the right number. Not only is it sort of a round, even number, but it would allow for what I characterize as quality retail space, where you now have higher floor-to-ceiling heights, and it would also allow for 2 stories above, including residential above, and residential are now going to minimum probably 9-foot floor-to-ceiling. In some cases, it's even going to 9.5 and 10. There's interstitial space between the floors, and there you got to make some allowance for probably a 3 to 4 foot parapet. That's how we got the 40 feet. I was also asked about whether or not we should have required a step back at the 3rd floor, and it's my opinion from a design standpoint, I would not recommend a step back. I think it's unnecessary in the context of a 3-story building. Perhaps if you were doing a 4 or 5-story building, you'd want to do a step back to provide some visual relief. I think the other thing to consider is the main streets which the B4 district fronts, which would include Millburn Avenue, Essex Street, and Main Street. They are, in my opinion, sufficiently wide in terms of the right-of-way and the cartway width, so that basically the properties could sustain 3 stories without a setback. And I think it would work without basically having to worry about a canyon-like effect. If you basically had a very narrow street, in that instance, you might consider a step back. For those reasons, that was our basis for the height, 3-story height and 40-foot limitation. One last thing I'd like to comment on, unless there are questions. A gentleman from the public asked about, basically indicated that the residential parking requirement was being eliminated. That is not the case. Essentially, what we're doing is we're removing the existing residential parking requirement and substituting it for compliance with state-mandated residential site improvement standards. They basically supersede what's in your zoning for residential use, even as we stand here. Your ordinance needs to be brought up to speed so that it's in compliance with those state standards. And those standards, in some cases, depending upon the unit type, may actually be more onerous than what's in there now based on the unit size. So suffice it to say that there will indeed be a parking requirement for residential use. We're not eliminating that. So I'd be happy to answer any more questions, but those are the highlights of the ordinance.
Okay, and the planning board found this all not inconsistent, and they passed this on for final reading today.
That is correct. On referral, which is required per the statute, the planning board found that it was not inconsistent with the master plan. They made certain recommendations. As you've heard from Mr. Falcon, they were considered to be not substantial in nature, and they were rolled into the ordinance, which you have before you for second reading and adoption.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we can take questions from the public. What? Okay.
Hi, thank you. This concerns...
Please restate your name so we can...
Sure.
And your address you're talking about
Mark
again.
Biggis, 688-700 Mars Turnpike in Short Hills. Good to be back. The issue I have is the gradation of size of buildings. The lowest size is 25,000 square feet with a parking requirement of 5 cars per 1,000 square feet.
Paul, are you also listening? Because this would...
I could probably answer
Okay.
this question, but...
Go ahead, yeah.
Sure. So
Yeah.
the majority of the retail centers on Mars Turnpike in the B2 zone are under 25, way under 25. I think they're under even 12,000 square feet. So I would request that you insert a parking requirement less than 5 cars per 1,000 square feet, perhaps 4 cars per 1,000 square feet. Because if you survey the buildings there are hardly any traffic at these buildings that comes anywhere close to 5 cars per 1,000 square feet. And they're hurting. I mean, there are so many vacancies for the smaller buildings, the former Wig store, Bill's Army Navy, former Jennifer convertible space, and they're underparked. They never have outflow. I agree that if you have hair salons, barbershops, the bagel place, sure. But most of those don't come close to 5,000 or even 4 cars per 1,000. So I would request that you take a look at that and make an adjustment. Thank you.
Okay, and I could have Paul answer to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, Couple things. So as part of our charge here, we were implementing some specific master plan recommendations. The planning board, when it did the master plan, did not basically address this particular issue of the gradation of retail parking based on square footage. I think the gentleman has some valid points. Traditionally, retailing, in particularly smaller size retailing, the standard has been 5 per 1,000 or 1 per 200. Either way you look at it, it's the same standard. That's what's in the ordinance today for buildings that are, or stores that are less than 25,000 square feet. What I would suggest is that this is something that perhaps should be revisited by the planning board and the governing body. It's a legitimate issue. Retailing, and you've heard this from me at the master plan, has changed. The parking demands have changed, and there may well be a basis to relax the requirement. I would only urge you to basically, and I'll defer to Kit, but if we were try to basically make that change now in the ordinance, I think it would rise to a substantial change, and you'd have to go back to a first reading and do this all over. What I would suggest is you basically consider this ordinance as written, and then the governing body, perhaps with help from the planning board, investigate this issue further and determine whether a change is indeed warranted along the lines of what the gentleman suggested.
And then it could be done as amendment?
Yeah, it can always be done as a single amendment,
Okay,
you know, a
so
one-page amendment.
That's
So-
really good, thank you. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks. B.B. Shear, 101 Oakview Terrace, Short Hills. I would like to know, what changes are you proposing for the B3 district? You mentioned there were going to be, that was one of the sorts of districts you mentioned.
So we're proposing to expand the list of permitted uses in the B3 district, not inclusive of all of the new uses. Since it is a neighborhood business district, we're not proposing to allow the more intense uses. Just by way of example, health and fitness facilities, we're not proposing there. Indoor commercial recreation, we're not proposing there. But showrooms, retail showrooms, educational play centers, instructional schools and studios, like a yoga studio or Pilates, or art studios and galleries. That would be the extent of the increase of uses in B3, which, by the way, includes a number of areas, including the stretch of what I'll characterize Upper Millburn Avenue, as well as the area around the Short Hills train station.
So I would like to ask, were residents in these districts notified of this proposal? Because I didn't get any notice of it.
I didn't do the notice, so I'll defer to whomever did the public notice.
Within 200 feet of the zone.
Pardon me, B3? You sent out a notice of this?
Yes.
Yeah. Within 200 feet of the zone.
Oh, if you had to be within, well,
200 feet of the zone.
Any zone that was affected by this ordinance.
so the B3 district along Chatham Road, that just, where does that end? How deep does that go? Does that go, how deep does